I'm Steve White, part of the Rural Radio Network, and joining us on the program today, we have Doug Simon of Tredas and J.J. Lauby from the Holdridge, the Loomis area. Guys, it's been quite the week. We saw trade talks last weekend. China talk of a deal, possibly a 90-day pause, at least right now. We saw some biodiesel movement, some movement in the renewable fuels over the last week. It's been another week of headlines and impacting the markets. We're going to get both of their thoughts on that in just a moment. But first, here's a word from the Nebraska Soybean Board.
It may be small, but this little bean fuels a lot of power. It powers a food industry as a top source of protein. It's a fuel that powers diesel engines with fewer emissions. It powers a state economy and bottom lines. And it powers the rest of the world as a top Nebraska export. Yeah, it may be small, but we're finding more ways for this little bean to power Nebraska.
Welcome back to the weekly market roundup. Doug Simon and J.J. Lauby are joining us, guys, as we were talking a moment ago. Just another week, but there's been some things happen. Doug, let's talk about that. Going back a week ago, we were going into that weekend saying, gosh, what's going to happen with China? What's kind of your sense now that we've been through that weekend, and what can we make and read into the action that way?
Last Sunday, Treasury Secretary Bissett said that we're making a deal with China, and so that was real positive for the market Sunday night. We didn't really follow through with that on Monday. That's encouraging, though, that we're getting together. They dropped the tariffs for 90 days. There's still a lot of work to be done on the non-tariff trade barriers, phytosanitary type things, intellectual property. But, Trump's going in the right direction by forcing everybody to the table, and everybody's, starting to talk. And longer term, I think it'll be, productive to get these, have more, freer trade, more fairer trade. So it should be good longer term. But then Monday, the Chinese were talking to the Brazilians, and so the Brazilians are going to start exporting DDGs to China, and that's been a mainstay of U.S. So that was negative to the market on Monday as well. But the big deal was that WASDE report on Monday. That was a big kind of, I think, surprise, the way that they actually increased the exports for next year. They're keeping them similar to what they are for the 24-25 crop on corn and beans. And so actually the starting carryout stocks for next year at 1.8 billion on corn and 300 million on beans is actually, I feel, pretty constructive, given we started quite a bit higher than that last year, and that's what the commercial numbers were for this next year going forward. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, JJ, anything there that you want to comment on? What kind of stands out to you about the last 7 days here?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree there that the WASDE report really, to me, it was pretty shocking, shockingly bullish. Maybe we kind of saw that reaction early, and then we did see, like Doug said there, the market just kind of took the rumors of the biofuels, the tax credit thing. This is the administration's chance, I think, to prove to the farmers, to prove to farm country that he's got our backs. If he just does not give those waivers to those refineries, I mean, that's going to be a huge benefit to us. So there was a lot of wacky things that happened this week, but with the exception of corn, we're basically steady on the week.
Yeah. Let's talk more about that, Doug. What we were talking about there a moment ago with biofuels, the renewable sector, there was this leak that came out talking about biodiesel. Can you kind of explain what we heard, and then kind of how the markets reacted to that?
I think the administration, they created a little uncertainty, and so it had a big impact on the RINs. And I don't follow the biofuels as closely as probably I need to, but we were down $3.5 cents a pound on Wednesday or Thursday, when the news came out. So it was pretty negative to not only to the bean oil market, but also to the bean market. But if you'd looked at the fund positions in the bean oil, though, they are massively long. Commercial's been on the short side of that. And so unfortunately, you get a little negative news when those funds are so long. It scared a lot of them out of there. Now, like I said, we were back today on Friday morning. We kind of rallied back 2 cents, but midday here, we're actually flat on the bean oil. So it's been it's still kind of taking it on the chin, and beans have gone flat too for the day, for that matter.
Yeah. Well, just a reminder, you are watching the Nebraska Soybean Board Weekly Market Roundup, brought to you by Nebraska soybean farmers and their checkoff. So again, a lot of movement. What's both your sense? If somebody's maybe just kind of tuned out, they've been out on the tractor, they've been running the sprayer for a couple of days. Is there anything from the last 7 days that are really going to impact them, or continue if you're looking for marketing decisions or thinking about your marketing plan? Do we still have a sense of, are we going to be able to find those moments this year where we can maybe pencil out and find a little bit of profitability? Are we going to see those opportunities? And what should we be watching for, maybe to know when we might have those opportunities to sell?
Well, I think that honestly, I believe we've seen the most bearish numbers we're going to see on the corn anyway. Harvest planting is really going fast. That's kind of what the trade is looking at, I think, is the crop getting in timely manner. That's the first hurdle we got to pass. But again, I think we've seen maybe the most bearish numbers we're going to see this year as far as the acreage and the yield number that they gave us. I just can't see having that many acres and still producing a record yield. Everything's got to go right. I would argue that there's plenty of places out there that things aren't going perfect right now. So we could definitely see that. When that happens, I don't know. All eyes are going to be on weather. So, we've got a pretty decent shot, at least here in Nebraska, Saturday night through Tuesday. But beyond that, it looks dry. So if that little weather event falls short, that's when we could see this market maybe take off. It's kind of frustrating when you talk about the funds, that when you get the commitment of traders report that comes out on Fridays, that's from Tuesday. So when you get big moves late in the week, you don't really know for sure what those funds did. Everything's kind of in hindsight. I'm kind of getting in the weeds a little bit there, but that frustrates me.
Yeah, that's good insight. Doug, let's talk to you about we were just talking about weather for a moment there with JJ. You look into the I states, it looks not as bad. It looks a little better, but you look here in the northern plains, Kansas, Nebraska, certainly where we're sitting, South Dakota. It has been abnormally warm for this time of year. It's been dry. That's not a great way to establish a crop. Do you have any thoughts on how that, is there any possibility that that's going to impact some of these things we're talking about here?
The only thing you missed was the wind. I mean, we were 95 and very windy, and it dried out things considerably on Tuesday, Wednesday. So the bigger picture summer forecast for June, July, August are very dry, warm and dry. If you look at the NOAA numbers, and so the problem is we're in this weather pattern where it's cold off the coast of California and also up in the Gulf of Alaska. And so it depends on how that progresses during the summer. If it stays really cold up there in the Gulf of Alaska, we'll tend to get even more, kind of drier conditions. More, the heat comes out of Hawaii and kind of lands out in the Midwest, is what Ellen Taylor always used to talk about, the climatologist from Iowa State. But so that weather pattern we're in it's not great. I mean, just in the southern tier of Nebraska, where it's just so dry. I mean, they had that rain earlier in the week up in the northwest part of the state, which is going to help them a lot. But from where JJ is all the way across, southern Nebraska here over in the eastern side where we're non-irrigated, there's moisture maybe in the top, part of the soil, but the subsoil is not there. So we're going to need, the rain that they're showing for this week, even if you look at it over a 15-day period, it's still below normal. I mean, it would be a very beneficial rain to get that, but we've planted, the funds are in a thought that, okay, we're planting fast. Well, the reason we're planting fast is because it's so stinking dry, in the major part of the Corn Belt. If you look at kind of that southeast part of the Corn Belt, like southern Illinois, southern Indiana, that area is wet. But even if you look at the soil moisture maps in northern Indiana, northern Illinois, you look at Iowa, you look at Nebraska, Minnesota, parts of the Dakotas, it's still, if you look at whatever you want to call it, the 40-inch, 16-inch, 4-inch levels, it's dry. And so we've got through the last 3 years where we've had very timely rains in some areas. We've had decent crops, but we've also had some areas that are pretty poor crops. And we're kind of set up in that same boat where we're going to need perfect rainfall to have, I think what, JJ said, to have that decent crop. It's going to be hard to do that again. So the pattern's not real attractive right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least from our vantage point where we're sitting in Nebraska, it's hard to imagine that we're going to have those kind of numbers. One thing before we go, I wanted to touch on that's the grain side. There's a lot of challenges, but JJ, we're fortunate around here to be diversified. A lot of folks certainly have some crops, but have maybe a cow-calf operation and that kind of thing. That cattle sector continues to really prop things up and at least bring some opportunities for some profitability for some guys, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. If you here the last year, basically, you just own some cattle, you're going to be okay. But I've been preaching here for the last several months that prices don't stay at records forever. At some point, this thing's going to roll over. And, if you don't have any kind of protection on, all the profits you've seen in the last year might just go bye-bye in a hurry.
Yeah. We're about out of time. Each of you, anything you're looking forward to in the coming days that might give us a sense of where things are heading?
We haven't talked about that. Record funds short in that across Kansas City, Chicago, Minneapolis, about as negative as you could potentially get in the wheat. Corn funds are back to neutral. They were record long back in February. So, corn's gone to a point of weakness here. So got pre-harvest sales done. You can look at some calls to go along with your positions. And like JJ was talking, cattle are up in those high ends. People look at LRP or look at puts or hedging. You got to look at your break evens and stuff. But yeah, risk management's always the key word there on all of the commodities we're working with.
Well, very good. Well, we're out of time, but thanks to our guests today, JJ Lauby and Doug Simon. As a reminder, commodities future options involve a substantial risk of loss that's not suitable to all investors. And that is this week's weekly market roundup, brought to you by Nebraska Soybeans and their checkoff. I'm Steve White on the Rural Radio Network.